Agora, nesse vídeo aqui, eu queria reagir ao vídeo do Datto sobre as armas e armaduras exóticas que ele acabou testando quando ele foi lá à Band. Ele foi lá, testou algumas coisas da Forma Final. As armas e armaduras exóticas foram uma das coisas, e a gente vai estar reagindo aqui aos dois vídeos dele. Obviamente esse vídeo aqui será só das armaduras, o próximo será de armas, tá? Postei um vídeo recentemente também, hoje, algumas horas atrás, falando de tudo, como elas funcionam, mas esse aqui vai ser reagindo realmente a como elas funcionam num jogo, tá? Vamos ver como a exótica funciona e testar no jogo, às vezes pode ser um pouquinho diferente, né? Antes de começar aqui o vídeo, queria agradecer ao Datto, tá? Link está aqui na descrição do canal dele e dos dois vídeos. Estive falando um pouco com ele, pra poder reagir aqui a esses vídeos que eu não queria postar sem ele aprovar, né, obviamente. Então a gente tava falando um pouco. E é isso, né? Então, muito obrigado, Datto, por liberar a gente a reagir aqui aos vídeos dele. Então, bora lá. A tradução está automaticamente do YouTube, então, né? Infelizmente, caso você não saiba inglês, é um pouquinho complicado, mas estarei reagindo e tentando traduzir algumas coisas que o YouTube é meio badadas. Então, é isso. Bora lá. Diminuir um pouquinho o volume. Esse aqui vai ter zero spoiler de campanha, tá?
I went to Bungie a couple of weeks ago where I was invited to check
Falei,
out some
ele foi
stuff
na
from
Bungie.
the final shape a little bit early. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the exotic armor from the event that
As armaduras, o próximo será de
we did
armas,
a
tá?
little preview of the teasers that Bungie put out a little while ago. This is going to be actual gameplay of them, which
Gameplay
means
de
that,
todas as
yes, any
armaduras
preview
da forma
videos
final.
that I did, I lied. I was acting. I faked it.
Ele já sabia o tempo todo quando ele fez o vídeo das armaduras que eles estavam revelando semana passada. Ele já tinha ido da Band conhecer elas.
In the teaser, we saw Hazardous, Propulsion, and
Esse
exotic
aqui é o peitoral novo exótico.
rockets on your class ability. It actually works like so. Weapon precision hits or final blows have a chance to load a kinetic Exodus rocket.
Tem chance, tá?
Is pretty high.
Tá,
Class ability fires the rockets. Then, depending on how many rockets hit targets, you will get a damage boost to rocket damage for a short duration.
Ah, entendi. Então, dependendo de quantos bazucas da tua habilidade de classe acertarem nos inimigos, você vai receber esse buff de volta, tá? Então, você tem 6. Acho que se 6 acertarem, você recebe 6 buff de dano pra tua bazuca. 35?
For the duration. The text description is a little weird on the buff. It'll say enhanced rockets X6. I thought initially this meant like, you know how explosive light has X6 and then it ticks down whenever you shoot a rocket, like X5, X4, etc. This doesn't, which tells me that X6 is the strength of the buff you receive because that's how many rockets were fired. I'm not 100% on that. Maybe somebody else went to this.
Vai ser dano igual pra todos. E quando você gastar, quando você gastar os 6, gasta os 6, né? Mas pode ser muito forte, velho.
The main data point I was trying to hunt down was, is this even good? Are the rockets doing any damage at all? Let's find out. I'm stepping into an expert Nightfall, 15 levels under. I stack up my Exodus rockets to the max, I stun the overload, and I fire the rockets. And the damage is not too bad.
Não é ruim, velho. Você só usou a habilidade de classe, velho.
It's not one-shotting a champ at this level, but it's doing slightly more than half damage. I've comboed this with Dranger's Lash to provide a suspend on the target as well for a little more control, even though...
Nossa, é verdade, né? Você taca, suspende e ainda dá dano. E, tipo, todas as bazucas vão acertar, né? Isso é nice, né? Novo.
Where I see this faltering a bit more is outside of solo play, where you aren't able to charge up your rockets as often as you can by yourself. But that being said, you're probably going to try to use this in specific situations, either taking down one big dude or a lot of smaller ones. And that's not a constant occurrence in the game, so that gives it a little more viability. I used Abeyant Leap for the good part of a year, and all that did was suspend a couple more enemies. This is not exactly too far off from that, which is what leads me to believe it might get used in a GM Nightfall setting or something like that.
Você perde vezes 6.
So we'll see.
Você perde instantaneamente, velho. Não é tipo, vai reduzindo. Por isso que eu tava mencionando a carga de armadura, que vai reduzindo, né? Você perde instantaneamente,
Now, with
velho.
this boosting your rocket damage by 35%, this also has some room to shine in the rating scene.
Exatamente. Fico
What
pensando.
stacks with what, and does this stack with this and all that. But 35% rocket damage for 10 seconds is quite a long time if it does end up stacking with a lot of other things. In PvP, it wasn't possible to kill someone with 6 rockets outright, so don't think you're gonna just go
PvP vai ser
around
horrível.
instigating
esperava,
people
né?
with your wall. For me, it was a bit of a challenge to even get to 6 stacks and then also use
Mas uma
the
bela curva ainda,
rockets
velho.
in
Não
a
é tão
way
ruim.
that I
Mas não
hit
usaria,
the
obviamente.
target with every single rocket, and it won me the fight. I got it to happen a couple of times. That was about it. The other exotic, as if Banner Titans didn't have
Cara,
it
esse aqui eu tô
good
interessado.
already, is a strand-based exotic called Wishful Ignorance. You get an additional Frenzied Blade charge. That's now 4 charges.
Quatro
And
cargas,
Frenzied
velho.
Blade and Flechette Storm briefly increase their damage with each strike. And, I'm not even done, and
Cara,
Pulse
esse exótico vai ser
from
muito
Banner of
quebrado,
War
velho.
feeds you melee energy based on the number of allies healed. Syntheseps got nerfed, Banner of War got nerfed, and now
Esse aqui vai ser
I'm starting
perfeito,
to
velho.
see why. Yes, this is now conspiracy
Exato.
theory Datto. No, those got nerfed because they were really good. But then, like, also, this is
Uma
now
boa quantidade de
showing-
vida, velho. Do boss ali. Não sei, tipo, nível, né? Mas foi quase. Foi mais de um
I
terço.
really don't have a ton to say on this exotic because I think we all know how good Banner Titan is, even with its upcoming nerfs. And all this exotic does is just juice up Banner Titan.
Cara,
and the
4
good parts
cargas,
of it.
mais dano.
Unfortunately, I didn't get
Shoo.
exact damage values for Frenzied Blade as I played this in Patrol, and there were not many Patrol enemies that could survive 4 Frenzied Blade attacks or
Verdade.
a huge batch of Storm attacks, but for what it's worth, my swings on this boss enemy go from the mid 20,000s to the mid 50,000s.
50
I think that's
mil.
incomplete data. I don't think that's the best representation of the numbers because my Flechette Storm
Tipo,
example shows
Não me fala, tipo, 50 mil de, porra, tanto dano, mas vai de 20 mil pra 50 mil.
a much smaller increase in damage, going from around 9,500 to 13,000 per hit, which feels a bit more in line with what I was expecting. The bump in melee energy isn't anything too crazy when you're just by yourself. Unfortunately, I didn't get to test any sort of group content,
Ok, não
group
testou com
healing,
grupo.
higher difficulty content with these gloves, but like, you know, we all know what's up. These gloves have a pretty high chance of being stapled to your hands if you are a Banner Titan. Warlock,
Interessante, velho.
you're up next. Let's talk.
Cara, ali vai ser dominante, velho.
Mataiodoxia. Am I even close on that? Let's Google it.
Mataiodoxia.
Mataiodoxia.
Mano, o cara no
Greek
Google
word,
tratou, velho.
apparently, meaning vanity. All right. I probably butchered that really bad. I'm sorry. This is the Arcane Needle exotic
foi meio-
where
meio
people
badadas, né?
were a little apprehensive because it seemed like you needed a lot of charges to get that suspend effect. So let's clarify that. One needle hitting an enemy will cause that enemy to provide a suspending detonation when killed. Landing multiple will immediately trigger that suspend detonation,
Cara,
and it will be even bigger. Killing
sei lá.
suspended targets gives melee energy, and your arcane needles are effective versus barrier champion shields. It's also
Enquanto é que tô de volta,
and your arcane needles are
corpo a corpo em
effective
cheio.
versus barrier champion shields. It's also going to mark targets that you've hit with arcane needle, so you can keep track of which targets you've hit. I thought that was very nice. So, a bit better than I originally was anticipating, and to reiterate,
Sei lá,
while
velho.
this will be good for strand purists, I think a big part of this exotic is to give suspend to prismatic warlocks.
É,
which
foi isso que eu pensei
don't
quando eu
have
fiz review
access to
na
otherwise.
live, tá?
The
Dessas
melee energy
dessas
from
armaduras
killing a
exóticas.
suspended target is not also anything too crazy
Review.
per kill,
Falei
just
delas,
like
né?
the Strand Titan gloves. It's your ability to rack up a lot of suspend kills that's going to make or break your experience with this exotic. Given how good Prismatic felt to me during gameplay, both in the Legend campaign and outside of it, I could see this getting some use if you build into it with your fragments.
Cara, tem que ser, eu acho que ele falou, velho, tem que ser uma build muito específica pra suspensão de arcano.
Suspend potential, very good, but further increasing your potential, this never hurt anybody. Also,
Sim.
Prismatic
Pois
has
é.
fragments that boost your ability to gain Transcendence energy, and
Talvez.
one of them will boost your Light Transcendence when you kill targets that have a Stasis or Strand debuff. So there is some build crafting to be done. We talk a lot about Prismatic in a different video that I will link at the end of this one and in the description. Otherwise, not too many numbers or percentages to really discuss here, so we're going to move to the next thing. Speaker's Sight.
Essa aqui eu quero ver, velho. Essa aqui é uma torreta de cura, pra você tacar uma granada de cura. Uma cura vezes 2. São 5 tiros da torre de cura. E é cura vezes 2, que é o melhor. A cura e restauração vezes 2, velho.
Another thing that I didn't get to test was whether or not you can use it like a regular healing grenade and still have the turret be around. Like normally you just lonely island the grenade and then
ele não testou uma coisa que eu queria imaginar que funciona, né? Que é você, tipo, dar um tiro que tá caindo de cura pra se curar e a torreta fica lá depois. E não chegou a testar isso aí.
You run into it and it consumes the grenade. I didn't check to see if you could do that and still have
Pô, se ficar lá é sacanagem, velho.
My guess would be yes, because otherwise any sort of accidental touching of the grenade just entirely defeats the purpose of the exotic.
Tem esse ponto.
But the point of the exotic is to maybe throw the grenade somewhere else and just let it do its thing and then you not have to worry about it. So I'm not sure. I also don't know if I'm fully investing my exotic into a healing turret. Maybe there will be some situations where it is super helpful.
Então, em Rage Day 1 eu imaginei isso aqui, velho.
Sure. I remain skeptical for now. Hunters, we have your exotics. Let's
Essa aqui eu achei bem ruim, velho. Bonito pra caralho, mas muito ruim.
This is the one in one of the previews. Your uppercut arc aspects, so the new one, Ascension, and Tempest Strike, throw bouncing explosives that jolt and damage, and jolting nearby enemies gives you damage resistance. I hopped into a Legend Onslaught to really give this thing a spin, and I was a bit underwhelmed upon my first impressions. The damage on those explosives is basically only there to apply jolt to targets, and you should think of this thing as more of an AoE jolt machine than anything else. The explosives feel like they didn't do a whole lot of anything, although this first wave is a bunch of servitors, which have a lot of health. Against dregs, it's a bit more noticeable. I could see a world where mass applying jolt is good, and you're just chaining damage everywhere, especially in a group setting, but just by myself, I'm not the most enticed by this option right now.
Essa aqui eu acho que foi a pior exótica da DLC quando eu vi.
Double stacking of Tempest Strike and the new aspect though, which is where you could get some more potency out of this exotic. The new aspect also gives you amplified when you use it, and there are a couple of fragments in Prismatic that give you bonuses based on having a light element buff like amplified. So there is some synergy that is possible.
Cara, mesmo com sinergia, velho, tipo, não dá muito dano, é só pra...
But just looking at this exotic purely in a vacuum, it did feel a bit underwhelming without a significant amount of build crafting put into it. Once we get the ability to do some build crafting, maybe it has a bit more to offer. Balance of Power is the final exotic based on threaded spectrum.
Aquela que você esconde, tipo, é do cone, basicamente.
Simply because all it does is buff threaded spectre.
Cone do
durability, more threadlings when damaged. There's a PvP part built in too. While you're near the spectre, you do not appear on the radar, so it's just going to be the spectre on the radar, not both of you. Threaded spectre is actually not the worst PvE option in the world, but considering the tools hunters have available to them right now, putting my entire exotic into
pra PvE vai ser bem ruim, mas pra PvP, velho,
does not seem worth it. PvP, on the other hand,
I
know that we had that time period where triple strand hunter threadling spam was just kind of really wrecking the place. It's not around as much anymore. Do I see it making a comeback because of these boots? To be determined. Again, consult your local PvP expert on that.
Talvez. Cara, se esconder atrás de um cone e ficar invisível no radar é muito forte, velho. Primeiramente porque você ficando atrás do cone, você tira o me assiste, né? Primeiramente. O cara precisa atirar no cone primeiro antes de atirar em você. E você não fica invisível. Muitas vezes a pessoa olha o radar, pô, vê o cone, beleza. Mas esquece. Agora você pode esquecer que tem uma pessoa por trás dele. Então pode ser muito bom pra isso, tá? É isso. Nos vemos no próximo vídeo, reagindo às armas. Muito obrigado, Datto. pela conversa que a gente teve e também por ter liberado aqui a gente assistir esse vídeo, tá? É isso e falou!